Welcome to the Zabaan Show with Ali Taqi, and I am Ali Taqi, and we have a very special guest today, Neha Tiwari, and Neha Tiwari is also she's a teacher at Zabaan, she's a director, she's an owner, she she was my good my better half. She's a half. She's a no. You're a third. You're a third now.
Yeah, I would like to be a fourth. But
Fourth.
yeah.
Okay. I don't know what that means. Whatever. So actually, just to give the background on this, Zabaan has 4 directors and has 3 owners, and so Neha and I are directors and owners, and there's Mr. Saraf and Mira Saraf, who are also owners and directors, and which we will be interviewing them too. But I'd like to welcome you.
Thank you.
Neha, thank you for coming in. Actually, she's in town right now for a meeting that we just had, and I thought let's sit down and chat with Neha and figure out what you do. Can you tell us about what you do? And
so like Ali said, I started teaching at Zabaan. I think I joined Zabaan in 2011, 12, and initially I wasn't teaching. I was in charge of scheduling in students and answering emails and figuring out their language requirements and scheduling them with the right teachers. And then as the demand for classes increased, and we felt that we needed teachers who could teach more advanced levels of Hindi. I started taking some classes, and I think that was a defining moment for me as an individual as well, because I had not taught language before that. And
what did you do before?
So I've switched fields a couple of times. So I was trained as an engineer, but then once I graduated, I joined finance, and I was hired by Lehman Brothers the year 3-4 months before it went bankrupt in 2008, and then that office was taken over by another bank, a Japanese bank called Nomura. So I worked for them for about 1.5 years, and then there I felt that I'm interested in understanding how economies work. So my next step was to study economics, and I did that in Delhi, and it was during that time that I came across Zabaan and I got into languages. And I think looking back, I think it was like, how do I say it? It's just like I was looking for the thing I was passionate about, and I hadn't found it until Zabaan happened. And when that happened and I really realized that I actually love languages, a number of other things about languages clicked as to why I always felt a special connection to, say, Urdu, or why I always enjoyed learning about grammar, reading about grammar, while I was expected to learn science or math instead. So when I got into languages, the memories of how I had enjoyed them before as a child came back, and that was an affirmative experience. At that moment, I knew maybe this is what I'm meant to be doing. And I just went along with it. I went along with the flow, and I think I really like where I am right now.
And a lot of students love working with you, and you're such a great teacher. You have all of your students love working with you, and they learn so much. And
I'm fortunate, but I think it's they do learn from me, but I can't even tell you how much I've learned through them and from them over the years. It's never a one-way process, even though at the moment or at the time it feels like it's a one-way thing where I am the one providing information. Actually, the questions that people have asked over the years have made me think about things I would never have thought about had those questions not been asked. And that's such a crucial thing.
Can you think of an example?
Yeah, like we all know compound verbs in Hindi, and that's like one of my favorite topics. I really like talking about compound verbs, and you know as well that there are no rules for compound verbs as such. When do you use them? Say, unlike other aspects of Hindi grammar where The rules are very clearly defined, that this is where you use the imperfect, this is where you use the progressive, this is how you form the progressive. Where do you actually use compound verbs, and why do speakers tend to use it more in certain contexts and not so much in other contexts? Those things are not clearly explained in grammar, and there are no well-defined rules for that. I mean, there are explanations which are not, which go beyond our duties as a teacher sometimes, because for us it's more about covering the concepts, but getting people to speak, that's our focus area. Is eventually we are not going to delve into the philosophical reasons or the linguistic explanations of compound verbs, because that's fascinating. That's an interesting aspect of Hindi, why Hindi speakers tend to do these things, but that's not the focus in a language class. The focus always has to be on proficiency, and that I have to cover these certain constructions and keep going with the pace. So I think compound verbs is one such area where whenever I am there with a student, they always ask very interesting and detailed questions. And
like, for example, why is this compound verb being
used
like
here? why did they use it here, and why did they not use it here?
Yeah, right. Yes.
And
that is a good question.
And when someone asks you that question, I don't know. I mean, I would always think that there must be a very good reason why speakers are doing that subconsciously. They're not aware of that. They're not thinking consciously that I should use a compound verb here and I shouldn't use it here. It just comes naturally to them. But there must be something more about it. Otherwise, these two things wouldn't exist. The two different ways of saying the same thing wouldn't exist.
No, they wouldn't.
And once you start thinking like that, your mind spirals to different possibilities. And it only happens when someone asks you that question. If someone would have asked me, यहाँ पे कर दिया क्यों कहा और यहाँ पे किया क्यों कहा आपने 10 years ago, I might have said, well, there might be a reason, but I don't know. And maybe I don't want to know right now. But as a teacher, if someone asks me that now, I feel like I should know the answer. Not just like it's my responsibility, yes, but like the answer should exist. And figuring out what that reason is really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And
especially with compound verbs, given the reason for why they are used in the language. I mean, it's
an ongoing field of research. It's not that linguists have given a final vote and said these are the things it is used for. It continues to, I would say, baffle a lot of people, including linguists and grammarians, because it's really hard to pin down what they're doing in the language. And
at Zabaan, one of the reasons why we're considered, one of the best, if not the best, language school for Hindi, Urdu, is because we've got the explanation pretty close to being down as to like why compound verbs, how they function, and I would say that personally, this is also one of my favorite classes to teach. I really enjoy explaining how compound verbs work, what are the internal processes going on inside of a Hindi speaker's mind, and it's so fascinating to get into that in detail.
Yeah, the other thing, like I recently, if you're just talking about constructions, Yad is another one of the explanations that I happen to develop over time, just purely because people asked what is going on with Yad, like why are there 5-7 different verbs with Yad?
Yad meaning memory, a feminine noun.
And there's Yad karna, Yad hona, Yad rakhna, Yad rehna, Yad dilana, Yad ana. What is going on with Yad, and like how am I supposed to memorize these things? And
ironically,
and their usages, and eventually it started out 5 years ago. It started out just as clearly defining the verbs separately from each other, just making the bare distinction, and now the explanation has developed to a point where I say, when you look at memory, Yad is your memory. You have to look at the process of memorization as inputting information, retaining information, recalling information, checking the state of information, and reminding. And for each of these steps, there are 2 different ways of approaching them. Like inputting information, you can input it intentionally, that you mug up something and you sit down with a list of words and mug them up, and that's one way of memorizing something. But then there's also Yad hona, which is like it happens. It's just something that a teacher keeps repeating something again and again and again, and eventually Yad ho gaya, I wasn't trying to do that, but it just happened. Similarly, retaining information could be yaad rakhna, which is I have to tell myself that I need to keep this in my mind, versus yaad rehna, where I didn't really make that much effort. It just happened to stay where, like, it found place in my memory and it just happened to stay there. So there are these two different modes of volitional inputting or volitional retaining or volitional recalling versus something that happens non-volitionally, something it happens on its own, and then what is going on there and why Hindi is trying to make such precise distinctions between the two. So just seeing that as a teacher, just seeing that explanation develop over time, that it just doesn't happen in one class or in 1 year. It's like you teach and you teach and you teach and you teach for a number of hours, and then you ask the same questions and you're put on the spot, and it helps in refining your explanations and fine-tuning them to a point where you can say, well, I think now if anyone asks me about Yad, I know how to clarify this for them. And I think that's been the rewarding part of this entire journey. The other thing that's been good is learning a new language myself. And I mean, that's...
like 2 or 3 languages.
So Sanskrit I kind of knew already because I did it in school, but I started, I picked up the Urdu script.
But the Sanskrit was kind of like...
It needed... I needed to work on the grammar. I had only done it the way they taught it in school at that point. But I didn't exactly know the Indian traditional grammarian method. The Panini school of teaching grammar is a very, very different, and actually very different from how we teach it in school today in India, and very different from how modern grammarians teach modern or classical languages. So Panini's method was a different thing altogether. And it's a fascinating approach. I didn't know about that.
Panini is a grammarian from what era again?
500 BC, around that time. Or maybe 250 BC, I'm not particularly sure. Around that time. Yeah.
Pretty way back.
Yeah. So he is the author of the Ashtadhyayi. That's not the first grammar book for Sanskrit, because Panini also refers, he says that he's indebted to a certain tradition of grammarians and etymologists. But his is the first work pretty much that's found in a whole state. And once that was written, it kind of became the standard textbook. He had encapsulated the entire grammar of Sanskrit.
And he's restructured it, reorganized it. Yeah.
He had a particular plan. I'm not saying it was entirely his own creation, but he basically solidified a lot of different ideas at the time and built his own system, and then a couple of later grammarians added things to it or modified it a little bit because certain rules were... Basically, it's like a computer program. It's like a computational thing where you put a root through in his sutras and you get a word out of his sutras. So it's like a computer program. And there were certain things that went wrong about, like it needed tweaks, and a couple of other grammarians did that. But I wasn't aware of this system, and that was, again, learning that... was finding out about that and just understanding how, back in the day grammarians taught of language, and, how, like, programming is not a new idea. It already existed in a certain sense back in the day in the form of these sutras. And that was an interesting experience too. I think
so how long did you study Sanskrit?
I've been studying on and off.
Post Zabaan, like during Zabaan.
I've been studying on and off. Like I started it again in 2011-12, I would say, and I'm still doing it. It hasn't stopped. I think what I need to work on is like, Jagannathan ji, who teaches Tamil and Hindi at Zabaan.
The author of this book.
Yeah.
This is one of his...
Yeah, he was at Zabaan at the Delhi Center last week. And we were talking, and then over lunch he said, "Oh, so you like languages a lot?" And I said, yeah, I love languages. And he was like, "I'll tell you one thing, is something that I didn't do, but I think if you do it, it'll be really good for you." And he said, take 1 year and focus on one language and try to become really good at it instead of doing different languages at the same time. And that's just something that I need to maybe implement very soon. because right now my attention is also divided between a number of different languages because I continue to work on Sanskrit.
Sanskrit.
I've learned Persian, but I need to work on my vocab, and I also teach Persian, so I keep going back to Persian. And I recently found Rumi's Masnavi in Persian with Urdu translation and commentary.
Oh, wow.
So I just started reading that. And
how big is that book?
It's the one that I got. That set is 6 volumes.
Wow. Where did you get that? Sorry.
So
this is a
the teacher was teaching me Arabic.
Uh-huh.
They said, do you want to go to Old Delhi to get some books? And so we went to Jama Masjid, the Urdu Bazaar there, and we found the Anjumane Taraqi, the old
one
bookstore.
Yeah.
And I asked him, do you have Rumi's
Jama Masjid, gate number 1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, and it's very close to the metro station. So and on the Purple Line, right where the Zabaan thing is. So basically from Zabaan to Jama Masjid, you can go in like 30 minutes. 20 minutes to 30 minutes. It's extremely convenient.
And that's a good bookstore, actually. Yeah.
It's a good bookstore, yeah. And I mean, the place, I don't know it's just like I feel really welcome there for some reason. And I go and like I asked them, like, do you have this? And they said, yeah. And then we brought out these 6 volume set and I purchased that. And I asked Raza, who teaches Urdu, if he's also learned Persian. So I asked him if he'd like to look at it together, and he said yes. So we just started doing that, and we've just done about 1 page, but that's actually a fulfilling thing to do, because having learned Persian for 3 or 4 years, to go and look at a classical poetic text,
which in Rumi is like 13th century, 1200s, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's well known.
Of course,
he's
yeah.
well known all over the world. So.
Wow, amazing 3 years of learning Persian, and now you're reading 13th century poetry.
I mean, there are elements of the language which are different from modern Persian. I've learned modern Persian, and so we have to, dig in dictionaries sometimes or look into grammar books to figure out if there was a different usage in the older language we are not aware of, and so it doesn't go as fast as I would like it to, because there are new words. On top of that, there are certain grammar rules that are different. Plus, it's written in how Indians would write Persian, and so they tend to use some letters like badi, where modern Persian would only use choti and stuff like that. So there are slight differences which make it a bit challenging, but overall, I've not been disheartened. So
one thing that you're saying here and that I've known about you is that you have a great deal of understanding and patience towards the language learning process. I mean, you appear to you have this understanding that it's just there's no end, or there's no, is this something you do? It's like a job, and that the fluency thing is a sort of. What is your opinion about fluent? Like, how well do you speak? When you speak to people in Persian, given that you've been learning it for 2-3 years, what do people say about your spoken Persian?
Well, I only know a few speakers, and they are always very happy to hear it. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm lucky that I found native speakers who are encouraging, who are welcoming, who want to see that. But they seem receptive, and they seem, like. Some of them can't talk in another language. They don't know Hindi or English. So the only common language then between us is Dari or Persian. And we do get in exchange a lot of information.
How long do you have a conversation with them?
Well,
like an hour?
I would say an hour or something.
Non-stop, back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's not intense. It's like they ask about me, how I'm doing, how my family is doing, how my son is doing, and then I ask about them, how their children are doing, and it's usually around similar, convenient, comfortable topics. As soon as it goes to a more political topic, then I wouldn't know the words, and that's where the problem lies right now, that I know that I need to work on certain vocab areas. But for me, I started learning Persian not because I wanted to essentially talk to people or understand the news. That was not the agenda. I just felt called to the language, and I just started doing it, and I didn't have a goal in mind. And I think the patience with language learning as such, it came from Sanskrit, because having done it for years, and still doing it, I know that I'm nowhere close to where I need or I want myself to be. But it's just that Sanskrit is like one of those languages that makes you work really hard because the grammar is difficult, the words, there are too many things to remember at the same time, and especially if you've not had teachers consistently over a period of time, it's, you're doing it on your own. It builds this, it gives you this certain perspective that, oh look, I could do this much only, and now I can do this much, and now I can do this much, and now I can do this much. And I don't know, like for some reason I'm okay with moving at like this step by step way. I just feel that, okay, maybe in a few years I'll know a little more, and then I'll know a little more, and then I'll know a little more.
That's great. That's yeah, I find that with my students, that's that particular attitude that actually leads them to fluency. Mm-hmm. The thing is that the impatience, like whenever I find that some people are feeling impatient, mm-hmm. that's kind of counterproductive. It doesn't. It's harder for that person to reach fluency.
I think it's something similar to what we've been talking about with respect to positivity in general, or mm-hmm. maintaining a positive
attitude.
Attitude is that if you feel that you are sort of failing yourself, or you're not achieving a certain proficiency goal, or you have that
or you did so
feeling,
much,
or you did, it becomes a sort of an obstruction to learning further, because you're always rationally judging, is there a point in doing that, or should I just stop? Is there any point in continuing, or should I stop? But if I think if you've been called to that, if it's something that you really enjoy doing and like doing, there's always a point in continuing, because they say the fun is in the journey, right? And I have not seen that with a lot of other things in my life. I mean, it's not that I'm a super patient person when it comes
mm-hmm. That was my next question. Mm-hmm.
Other things in life, but
mm-hmm.
when it comes to languages, for some reason, I just know that it's going to be a long process, and that's built in me. Yeah.
So that leads to my next question, which is, well, So what is it? I mean, did you discover this aspect about yourself, that you have a patient side to you, like while you were learning? Is this something you knew that you had to be, or was it just something you realized and you became comfortable with, or is it just that you didn't even know that you were being patient? Or because I think this is you didn't know, or you don't even know if you're being patient now.
It's not a conscious thing.
It's just how it is. Yeah.
It's just how it is, and it's not that I have been very consistent with it. It's just what I need to be. Is that I've not put myself under pressure when it comes to languages, or even the languages that I'm learning. I know learning happens in spurts. So I know that, okay, right now I'm focusing on learning this grammar, and I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna learn this much, but then maybe I lose interest, or maybe I get bored. I don't push through, then I just take a break and I focus on something else. And then I know that it's not that I've given that up. I know it is going to come back. Like Punjabi, for example, I picked up this script over the last 1 year here and there. And I know I can read it. And I did read a few pages with Anshu, who teaches Punjabi.
At the Delhi Center.
But I'm not getting any time right now. And earlier, 2 years ago, I would have been like, Neha, you always do these things, that you start this and you start that and you never finish. But now I've reached a point of conviction that no, it's there. And I know that as soon as I get more time, and I'll come back to it, and I'll finish it and take it to the step I want to take it to. That it is something that I started, and one spurt is over and the next spurt is going to come, and I'm just going to work on it, and during that time, and it's going to happen. And there are a number of things lined up. There are a number of other languages that I want to learn, and I started learning Arabic, and that's going well because they're regular weekly classes. And
this is something that Arabic is something that we started back in 2012. That introductory class.
Yeah. And Arabic the grammar system is complicated. It's a difficult language. Grammatically, it's complex. At the same time, very logical and very mathematical and fun to do if you have the time and you have the patience. And the teacher
is important.
Yeah, and also the patience, because when you're solving, it's like solving sometimes like a math thing, and then if you don't know the words and you have to keep looking them up, and you look up the same word like 10 times and you're like, why have I not been able to memorize this word? And then you curse yourself a little bit that why doesn't things stick? But
that's just it's a complaint that I'm sure every language student
but
can
it
identify.
happens.
It
happens. I
yeah.
think every time you get to a new word, you have to sort of take a moment of awareness, take a deep breath, and think about the word a little bit, and try to hold it there and then let it go. While what we do mostly is, how I do it as well, is that I look it up, I solve whatever I need to solve, and I just don't think about it again. But I know that, like, for example, Jamal means beautiful or Taqi means smart. It's because these words, I've taken a moment out to think, okay, so this means smart in Arabic. So this means beautiful. Okay, so then when I did that, the chances of retaining them were higher because I took a moment to think about them. But then at the basic level, you're kind of bombarded with so many words that you can't keep taking those moments all the time. So you just have to be patient that, yes, I'm going to get there. Like, maybe I'm looking at 5 words in 10 sentences, and maybe it's going to go down to 4 words in 10 sentences to 2 words in 10 sentences until I know most of the words that I need to know. And
fascinating. That was really fascinating. Wow, that was a good one. That was that thing that you just mentioned right now about where you take a moment and you realize that Jamal is
I hope I recall it right.
where you just sort of like for a second, you reflect on that word, and that's an interesting way of explaining how the memorization process takes place, and also that part that you just said where at a basic level where there's so many new words, it's hard to appreciate a word because there's so many that you're learning. So in the beginning, it's a really kind of like a labor intensive process, and it feels more mechanical, but at an intermediate advanced level is where you can kind of just sit back and appreciate a word for what it is. And I've always, like, the way that I've been putting it actually recently over the past 3 years is, that you have to kind of just fall in love with the language, the words and everything, and you gotta appreciate it whenever you meet a new word. You have to, like, wow, you say, okay, who are you? And you have to treat it like a person, and you introduce yourself to it, let it introduce itself to you. Is it masculine, feminine, or is it an adjective? Is it type 1, type 2? Is it an adverb? Who are you? Looking at it that way and saying, okay, welcome. It's like,
I've known students, not many, but you teach them a new word, and they would. There is one such student, I think, at Zabaan right now, and he just uses that on the teacher, like, you're my dushman, or you're a stranger, you're ajnabi, and he just he imagines an invisible person in the class, and he just starts saying words to that person, like, you're this and you're that, or you're Dakianusi, or something like that. And so that's an interesting, that's a creative way of learning, which is that you kind of find people in your life or find situations in your life where you can use those words right then and there. And I think that helps with being able to retain those words eventually.
Fascinating.
And we're back.
So Neha, okay, look, you and I, we are both owners and directors of a language institute, and we've been around for 11 years, and we've worked with over 4,000 students, have taught 55,000 hours of language as an institute, and any of our viewers who don't know the process of learning a language, they're going to say, oh, well, aren't these two going to be a little bit biased? Aren't they going to be more inclined to tell us that it takes forever to learn a language, because the longer it takes for a person to learn a language, the longer we have to be students with them, and therefore they earn more money as a business and so on and so forth. So are we? I don't want anyone to think that we're biased about this. Really, what is it? What is this activity, in your opinion, of, okay, A, wanting to learn a language, B, taking the step of going out and learning it, and then, like, what is going on here, and what are we doing? What does Zabaan, in your opinion, what gap are we feeling, and like what? How do we assuage the concerns of our viewers who are concerned that, oh my God, she just said it takes forever to learn a language. I want to learn a language, but I actually don't want to learn a language forever. I kind of want to just learn it quickly. Well, how can we console or assuage the concern of our viewers now? Because what you said for me is great, and for a lot of people who are learning a language, we can identify. But what about the people who want to learn?
I think and this is the first time I've been asked this question, so the thoughts have not been fully formed yet.
It's just what it is.
I'm just going to say the first thing that comes to
please.
Which is that I think in the modern setup, in the modern way in which we think about things, it's more like a product, right? If you are offering a language lesson, it's like, is it the same as buying something off Amazon that that you possess forever? Or what you're buying essentially when you're doing a language lesson is the ability that you understand something better. And when I say that it's a process, I don't mean that you don't start talking. I mean, as a teacher, I would like my students to start talking or speaking or using the language from day one, even though I know that sometimes we don't encourage that because it can be daunting if you go out and do that and then not understand what the other person is saying. And that can be a discouraging experience in its own. But in the limited, in the confined, in the protected setting of the classroom with people who are encouraging, I would encourage my students to say a few things, because it's really important to start using the language. And so I don't think, when I say it's a process, I don't mean that you don't start speaking until you reach fluency. Actually, one can start speaking or saying little things and small things quite early on. You just have to, maybe as a student, understand that learning is a journey driven by yourself. The teachers are here as guides. They're there to help, and they have the information, and you go to them when you don't understand something or you want help in, because a teacher can present the information in a structured way and help you understand that information and help you practice it. So going to a teacher and taking a language lesson or a course is working on that bit, is getting the concepts down or is getting the vocabulary down. But the next step is maybe what do you do with that is also important. How do you use it? How do you practice it? How do you incorporate it in your daily life? And it's not something you shouldn't be putting too much pressure on yourself or feeling bad that you're not doing enough or that you could be doing more. Yes, that's how we push ourselves. We tend to push ourselves by making ourselves feel bad about things that we don't do or things we fall short of. But if you're a little bit relaxed and we let it come, it happens. You will eventually meet people or run into people who are encouraging of your journey and who help you practice it. You make friends who help you practice the language, are supportive during the journey, and then when you realize, oh, I've hit a snag, I can't move forward until I learn these constructions, or I can't move forward until I understand what's going on in this particular sentence, or how do I make a double clause sentence, I don't know about that. And then you notice that there's a conceptual gap, and that's a good time to go back to a class, because now it is clearly you've identified a piece of the language, like the concept or the language universe that you don't understand, and you also know that maybe yes, you can find the explanation in some book, in some grammar textbook, but it's probably not the same as learning it through a teacher who has taught the same thing for hours and hours and can give you examples, can also tell you about recent usages, you can ask them questions and they can confirm your hunches or your feelings about them. So learning from a book is not the same thing as learning through a teacher. There is a difference, and I've experienced both ways of learning, so I know it's not that I don't turn to books. Primarily I rely on books sometimes, because now having learned languages, you know that there's a certain structure to them. There's certain things that they want to say, and they will have their own different ways of saying them. But I think it's really important to identify those moments where you say, I need to go back to class and work on this, or I need to go back to class and I need to get these things down. I need to understand how these idioms work, or I need to know what's happening in the sayings, or like, you just identify things that you need to work on next, and then you go back to class and plug that in, and then you're back and you're trying to use it again. And this is it's a process. It takes time, because it's something. Every person will have their own way of learning, their own speed of learning, their own way in which they associate with the information, and it all comes down to their general inclinations, what they were born with, and like how they were raised in their environment, and how many languages they know. So it all depends. The learning process is not a uniform one. It's different for every student, and it's highly individualized, and we can't compare ourselves to other people in that respect. Maybe some people start speaking faster, some people start reading faster, but we all have our own paths, so to speak.
So in your opinion, are you then saying that we can, that every individual can learn a language? It's just and because there's this common thing that goes around out there, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm too old, I can't learn anymore," or "My memory is not so good," or there's that one, and there's the other one, which is I'm not good at learning languages. Like, what do you think about that? I mean, are these, what do we call these? Urban, what are they called?
No, I mean, of course, there is a difference in.
Is there any truth to this? Because I don't think there is. I don't think there's any. I think every human being who's alive and well and whatever is functioning, even people with learning disabilities, I think can learn languages. In fact, if a person with a learning disability learns a language, I think they might even, I won't say go as far as curing that learning disability, but it'll definitely improve their learning abilities because of what grammar is and what it does to your mind, and learning a grammar from scratch, how it resets everything. But what would you say to our viewers out there who are of the opinion that, okay, the two types of viewers in particular who I wish knew they could learn languages. One, the people who say they're too old to learn language. Two, that they are not good at it.
I would say that there is, if you look at it, there is a difference in the rate at which people learn and absorb new information and relate to languages, and it comes naturally to some, while it takes a certain amount of effort for others to be to have the same kind of interest and enthusiasm about it. It comes not while everyone can learn a language, how much in love are you with the process is different for every individual. There are individuals who really like the process of learning a language, and for them, and they tend to learn faster because they capitalize on the small gains that they make. They use it right away. They start going out and they start using things right away, and that gives them a positive feeling. And if it doesn't work out, they kind of, they try to reset. They don't get discouraged to a point where they stop learning altogether. So there are people for whom language learning is not a daunting or a challenging task. For them, they already have this understanding that it's going to be a while, and then those are the people who, I think it's ironic because people who think it's going to be a long process actually maybe end up learning faster, because they're not setting a goal for themselves. They're just saying, I'm going to see how it goes, and I'm going to see how fast it happens. And they're open to a lot of different things that maybe if you are putting a lot of pressure on yourself, it doesn't happen. So I do believe that there is a difference in attitudes, there's a difference in how open you are to the process, and there's a difference in how you absorb new information. There are some people who might like a more grammatically focused approach of learning. There might be some people who like more activity, more conversation in class, and so there's always going to be slightly different ways in which people learn and associate with language. And as teachers, we have to explore all kinds of ways so that our methodologies are more balanced in that sense, and we're not too focused in one domain and not like specialized or not focusing enough on the other. So to be able to appeal to a broad range of students and not just a particular kind of student who prefers a particular kind of class. So there's a difference in the learning process. There's a difference in the expectations people have from the process, and there's a difference in how people learn. And so that comes out overall as a difference in aptitude or rate of learning. But having said that, it doesn't mean that you can't learn. It just means that maybe if you're having difficulty learning, you have not figured out the right way to do it yet, or the way that works for you.
So you're the director of the Zabaan Center in Delhi, which has 10 teachers, including yourself, and that's a lot of teachers to manage. You are managing all of them, and I am the director of this location here in Mumbai, which has, including myself, 6 teachers. So just wanted to know what you thought about, how does it feel, and what is it like to run a language institute, with 10 full-time teachers. These are interesting individuals, the teachers themselves, educated, very skilled at what they do. They have their own idiosyncrasies, and I mean, you are.
You tell me first. How was it for you?
Well, I wasn't prepared for this, so the thing is that for me, I'll tell you, it comes naturally, and I'm just doing my job, and this was actually the question I really just wanted to lead into was a language institute. Is what role is it playing, in a society?
To answer your first question, it's like I don't feel like I manage teachers on a day-to-day basis. I they know the classes they have, they know what they're doing with a particular student, and they know they've been through the training process, and they've had enough experience teaching, so they know what they should be doing, and I trust their sincerity and their dedication to their jobs and their students. And being a teacher myself, I know that being teaching is not something that you can fake. It's not. It gets really obvious with the student if you're not prepared for class. They can tell if you're not present in the class, if you're not giving them your full attention, they can tell. And so when students keep coming back to their teachers and they only want to work with those particular teachers, and most of our students are like that, that tells me that the teachers are doing their jobs and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm there if something doesn't work, and there if they need some suggestions or help or guidance, or if they don't understand something, and I'm there overall overseeing the place. But I think as a teacher and a student and their relationship and their journey and whatever you might call it, it's sort of, it happens between them more so. And Zabaan is more like a space that allows this to happen. It has the resources, it has the people on the side who are ready to manage and take care of the peripheral things that happen around language learning, so that once you are in the class, your entire attention is on learning and making the most out of that 1 hour or 1.5 hours that you have with the teacher. And once you go out and you deal with all the other things, and then so as a language school, not as a teacher but as a person who's providing this space, I feel it's kind of like just providing the space for this kind of activity to happen, and getting the right people to train, and so that they can go on and become good teachers, and providing people this opportunity to discover this world of learning languages and associating with them, and how fascinating it can be, and move on from just grammar and proficiency, which is also important, to literature, to reading things in politics, to watching movies. And there's like so much that you can do with one language, and it's opening doors to an entirely new culture, an entirely new way of thinking. And there are very few such spaces that exist outside universities. In a university, you have people you can have intellectual discussions with, you can explore ideas, but outside the university system, in secular spaces, in professional spaces, sometimes we can be very goal driven and we don't have the opportunity to freely engage in conversations or in ideas or in just developing certain ideas or pursuing a certain passion. But I think Zabaan as a space provides an outlet for something like that, where even though you're not in a university setting, you're not in a college, you can still come to a class, and that class could just be about you giving your mind the time it deserves. Basically, you're saying that learning is like exercise. You know how we talk about we need to keep our bodies fit by exercising. The same idea has to be applied to the mind as well, because if you don't keep your mind active and engaged, it atrophies. Your abilities starting to weaken, and once the process of weakening starts, then it gets harder and harder to reverse that. But Zabaan outside the university system provides this kind of space where you can come and you can, it's like also brain gym. You can come and you can do a bit of conjugation. You can, if you're doing Arabic, you're solving these sentences that look very daunting in the beginning, but then you get the hang of it, and then you're doing that. You're trying to memorize new words, and this constant exercise of your brain. And if you know 2-3 different languages, you're making connections between them, and you're making connections with your own language and the language that you're learning, and one word reminds you of another word. And so just being able to do that, aside from the fact that you are going to be fluent in a language or not going to be fluent in language, just being able to do that for yourself, like provide yourself that mental workout, I think is good for us individuals, because I think humans yearn for that. Humans have a yearning for learning and growing mentally, and if they don't get an outlet for doing that, things start going wrong otherwise, I think. So I think as a space, Zabaan is doing that in the private sector, where if you feel that you need a space to exercise your mental faculties, to challenge yourself, and to see if you can take on a challenge of learning a new language and learning 10,000 words that you didn't know before, and agreeing to see the world in a slightly different way than you're used to. It's a challenge, and you take it up, and it's like any other activity you push yourself for. It's for yourself.
I could not have said that any better. I mean, that's the kind of thing, that when I hear that, even though I know that, but to articulate it and then hear it articulated, it just kind of proves the whole thing, the whole project of, because I think when I got into this initially in 2000. The process started in 1999 in Chicago, and then I graduated in 2003, and then I started teaching privately, and then I kind of knew this, and something the viewers might not know about me, people who are watching this who have known me for years. I mean, actually, I have a learning disability. I have this. I do. Yeah, it's not major.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Right now, I mean, I'm gonna just get a little confessional on this show, because I think it's what you said right now really resonated with me personally, because the brain gym part of this was the whole brain gym process of learning a language. I think is what cured me. Because I had a really hard time learning things. My concentration would be off. Conceptually, I didn't understand. For example, transitivity. I remember my university professor, she tried to explain transitivity to me over 2 academic years, and I was just blown away by this, and I thought no, this can't be happening. Why would anybody put a postposition after the subject if the verb is transitive in the perfect tense, and then I have to remember to make the verb agree with the object, and then if they put the postposition go after the object for emphasis, then it defaults to masculine singular. That was just, I even told her, I was like, look, I'm not sure if this is for me. I told her, and she talked me out of that. She said, no, just stick in there, just stick to it, and I was the person who I think everyone just thought
So
like
does,
poor guy. People were like poor
Does
guy.
Dakini have name? Just
Dakini, which is the parents of my the language of my see it comes out. My learning disability comes out. I have problems. But Dakini, which Neha just asked me about, is the native language of my parents who are from Hyderabad, India. And actually, no, it doesn't.
okay. That's
Maybe. However, I should have been able to. No, I have a learning disability.
okay.
I have one.
Okay.
I have. Like it's not. I don't want to belittle other learning. There are there's severe cases. Okay, there are really severe cases of learning disabilities. But I have one, and anyone who knows me from those early days knows they will say, yeah, that's true. Ali does have one, because my friends in college, in university at Loyola, they really saw this about me and they helped me. You know, they helped me learn English. They helped me learn how to write. They helped me. They were my friends in university. I'll never forget them. And my professor, they just really said, you know what, this guy, we gotta help him, and they did. And so it's, you know, this thing, you know, about how you call it a space to, you know, improve yourself, exercise your mind and things. I mean, I personally have done that, you know, and I think on another show. During one of the practice runs for this talk show, the Zabaan Talk Show, when I was talking with Zach, which maybe we should just release that too, because it was actually a pretty good conversation. In that, I do reveal that, you know, that I might be personally teaching Hindi because I want to learn it, you know. Like, I really want to just, like, I'm using teaching as a tool to learn it, and so... You know, do you think that has helped you? I mean, like learning Sanskrit. I'm teaching Sanskrit and learning teaching. What do you think is the, you know, the?
Yeah, teaching does help. Teaching does help advance your own understanding of the language that you're teaching, and especially if it's a language you yourself are trying to learn, I think it helps. But I know as a teacher, the way I like to teach, I just feel like, say, if I'm teaching Persian, I try my best, I give my best to the class, but I know that not being a native speaker, there's a certain thing that is missing in my teaching of Persian, is that I don't have the sensibility, the way to distinguish between this usage versus that usage, because I have not encountered the language enough to understand what are the feelings and the thoughts of the people when they say this versus what are the feelings and thoughts of the people when they say that. So I don't have that nuance. I have the grammatical understanding.
Which is called a corpus. This is called, what we're talking, a corpus would be all that data.
Yeah, I do have something. I don't know what it is about Persian. I do feel a lot of connection to it, and I do feel there is something
like what, like a past
life? I don't know. Like when I read it, I feel like, oh, I know this. It's like so easy. I don't know.
I mean, what?
But I still know that there is a gap when I compare that to, say, when I look at Hindi and when I teach Hindi, the nuances that I can explain are much more. And so while I do maybe, I mean, we have to ask my students, but I think I do a fairly decent job explaining Persian grammar. And
no, I mean, I've heard good things. I mean, I see the emails coming in, and people, you're very good at teaching Persian.
Yes, but it still would not be the same thing for me as teaching Hindi, because that's what I really enjoy. At the end of the day.
But this reminds me, though. You see, look, I mean, but however, if a person were to learn Persian from a native speaker who is not who doesn't have experience with grammar or teaching grammar, it wouldn't be because that's native speakers who don't know their own grammar, they could actually probably, no offense out there to all those good-willed native speakers who are trying to teach language, they're good-willed, they're nice. However, they might be. What do you think about them? I mean, they're. It's kind of like a risky thing, isn't it? That they're trying to teach a language that they don't know how to teach.
Yeah, I think teaching, being able to teach a language, it's the only qualification is not that you also speak the language. That's like, maybe that may not actually be a qualification, and we know that now, like, that's not needed. But what is needed is that you understand how language works, and that you understand how the language learning process works. And unless you have the understanding of both of those things, your teaching is not going to be as effective. And maybe, yes, if you're fluent in that language, if you have a corpus of that language, like you said, it will be even better. Your students they have hit a jackpot if they have a teacher like that, who knows how languages work in general, who knows how language learning process works, and who also are extremely familiar and comfortable with the language that they're teaching. Then that's like a combination that's hard to beat. But if you are lacking in a teacher like that, if you don't have access to such a teacher, then and you have to choose between these three things, like two of these three things, if you have to choose only one thing, I would go with the first teacher who understands how the language works. Maybe he doesn't appreciate the language learning process, maybe he or she is impatient, but he knows the grammar rules, and that's why I'm there for, because I need to understand how the language works. I can be patient with their impatience.
We don't employ teachers like that, by the way, at Zabaan. Second.
But if I have to choose two out of those things, I will choose the first and the second, because I do really need to understand how the language works, because that's how I learn language. Personally, is my style of learning is I figure out the rules, and that's how I feel comfortable. Then, added bonus, the teacher is patient, the teacher knows how to teach, the teacher knows how the learning process works, and that's a good thing. That's a really good thing in itself. So yeah, if you can't have all the three, if you have the first or the second, you're still in very good hands. But if you don't have the first and the second, and all you have is third, someone who's a native speaker but does not know the rules of the language and is not is not appreciative of the process that learning a language is, maybe it might not be a good experience. You may have to then find your own way of learning through that teacher. It's not impossible, but you have to take charge then. You have to come up with, this is how I want to learn, and you are just going to give me translations. Because if you ask them, why is it this way, or why is it this way, or why are you saying it this way, and maybe their answers are not consistent, or maybe they don't know that, okay, this is that rule and this is that rule, then that's going to be confusing, because then the figuring out of rules is left to you. While a teacher who knows the grammar rules, they have not left that task to you. They're giving you the rules, they're telling you how it works, so it makes it so much more easier to go that way. But if you don't have that kind of teacher, it's still not impossible to learn. You can try to learn with a native speaker, but then you will have to figure out your way of learning, in a sense. It has to be more self-driven.
But here's the thing though, I mean, look, people don't have to work with those people anymore. I'm just going to plug in Zabaan School for Languages here. Let me just do that, because the thing is that, you know what, and I'm just going to wrap this up now, it's been great talking to you, but I want to end on this note. Look folks, people who don't know us, who have not worked with us, and don't spend your time working with teachers who don't have experience teaching, because I can tell you right now, sometimes you know that part where you said that it can be confusing and blah, that can actually set you back. You could also be traumatized, because those teachers, who knows what they could say to you? They could belittle you in the class, they could make you feel bad and whatnot.
I mean, there are people with good intentions.
But we know people sometimes behave, teachers sometimes behave like, no, you should know that already. Or why don't you know that? I told you that already. Sometimes people guilt trip. Sometimes there are these teachers who guilt trip. We don't do any of that at Zabaan. We are all, I mean, look, I can't help but plug us. Because the thing is sorry. But just one little thing, which is that whole, oh, hey, I'm Mr. Saraf, how are you? Come on in.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Come on in. Neha, this is everybody. This is Mr. Saraf. And, he is a director, and the other owner that I was mentioning, this is Mira, his daughter.
Hi.
And they're here in Mumbai. Mr. Saraf is visiting from Delhi, and we just had a meeting today, which is also why we were able to talk to Neha today. And now How are you doing?
I'm doing great. We just finished our meeting. I'm heading back to the office. I have another meeting. I'll see you back in Delhi.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good seeing you. Good seeing
See
you.
you, Ali.
All right.
Take care and
I'll
God
see you
bless.
on Thursday. I'll see you in a few weeks.
Oh, tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Oh, yes.
Tomorrow.
See you.
Anyway, so sorry about that. I just want to say, hey, thank you everybody for watching this show. Thank you, Neha, for coming.
Yeah.
And
It was my pleasure.
God, you know, like I've known you for what, like 9 years or more, and I feel like I just learned something more.
I learned a lot.
Thank you for explaining to us how you view this whole activity, and you know what you think of everything, and it's so enlightening, you know. And I just. I will be inviting you back to the show next time you're in town.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll continue this discussion,
Yeah.
and we'll let the viewers ponder all this and hopefully contact us. Do subscribe to this channel. Do set the notification thingy to alert you to when is the next time we're going to have a show up. Also like this too, you know, that whole thing, and share it. Actually, why not share it? You know, everywhere you can on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Send it to your friends. Spread the word about Zabaan, because you know we're really interested in teaching you languages, and we're in a really good position to do that at this day and age, in this day and age. And see you next time. Thank you very much. Thanks.